Здравствуйте, дорогие друзья. Воскресный вебинар. С нами, как всегда.
Hello, dear friends. This is our Sunday webinar, and as usual, we're with Dr. Michael Laitman, and today's topic is the secret of happiness. Please ask questions. We will ask them here. We have translations into all languages. You can see us in Spain, in Latin America, in Japan, US, and France. Everybody's with us. Therefore, ask questions, and let's begin right away. What is the secret of happiness?
Смотря на каком уровне рассматривать. Если мы говорим про на уровне неживом, растительном или животном, то счастье заключается внутри биологического вида или растительного вида, или даже неживого.
If we're talking about happiness, then we're talking about happiness.
And if we talk about a person, then I think with respect to Kabbalah, a person can't be happy inside himself. Personal happiness, it's always momentary, and it always becomes not happiness. And in order to bring us to happiness, there are two systems, a positive and a negative. When we exist in one system, we must be connected to the other system. And I'll explain. For example, Baruch Salam writes that we are born, and care and love, they come from the parents, and they support us in life. They give us upbringing, and they lead us for a certain number of years. And we grow up without any worries, even teenagers. And then we go to the army, and of course it's also a game, maybe sometimes not as pleasant, but it's the same type of game. It's a struggle, but it's a relative struggle. Like in school, in kindergarten, and then when we get to become adults, then you really have struggle for survival, how to feed yourself, how to exist, how to move forward, safety, and so on. And so we see that there are two systems, a system that's positive and a system that's negative. And the system where we are in a smaller state, so-called katnut, or a childhood state, and then there's a state when we are as adults. And this includes the same thing in plants and in vegetables and in people, absolutely, definitely. So we see that there are two opposite systems of governance. In order to bring a person to likeness of the Creator, which is called absolute happiness, because the Creator is the source of everything that we can call good, happiness, fulfillment, and so on. For that, we also need two systems. One system is one that bestows, and the other system is that receives. And they are completely opposite from one another. And that is why everything that exists is separated into two parts. In spirituality, we see this from the first 9 Sfirot and Partzuf and Sfira of Malchut. And that's why we have the concept of time. You have a positive moment, a negative moment, positive moment, and negative moment. And it works the same way in everything, in order to combine the quality of bestowal with quality of reception together, because they can't really exist together, but they can be inside a person at the same time. And that's why there are these two different systems. One is love, bestowal, pleasure, and the other one is negative, which is the one that things and gives stress and so on. on one hand, the one that bestows doesn't really have anything to bestow on. The system that receives, it won't be able to receive. And so what comes to be that the movement from one system to the other, it creates time. It creates all these situations, changes, flows, what we call time, life, and existence. Outside of these two systems, without moving from positive to negative and negative to positive, we would not be able to perceive ourselves as existing. I'm sorry, so happiness. This was all a preamble. So happiness is in the ability of absolutely, as well as it was possible to combine these two systems, the positive and the negative, so that they would coexist and co-fulfill each other, so that a person would feel absolute harmony on such a level where he would exist above the negative and positive systems. He would exist in adhesion to the Creator, which is where everything comes from.
And there still needs to be a negative system, though.
Yes, of course, they need to be, and they must add to one another.
When you say you don't notice time, there's something correct about this.
In our state, no, you can't really not feel time, because you're always in a system of bestowal. When the children don't feel time, I remember I would run away to my friends to play with them, and my mom would say, "Oh, okay, for an hour at most," and I would think, "Yeah, an hour is so long." And I would come back and she'd say, "You weren't home for 4 hours." Where from? When you're in fulfillment, you don't feel time. But it doesn't mean that you're existing outside of time.
Why do people say that the greatest pleasure is when there's a certain combination with the opposites?
Yes, happiness is called when you solve conflicts. And from this we can understand that you can't have, for example, a family life. This, of course, pertains to many of us, without conflicts. And you can't have happiness without conflicts, and you can't have conflicts without aspiration towards happiness.
So the people that don't get into arguments are not happy.
Oh yeah, they're completely unhappy and they're completely mechanical pairs.
So people should seek for conflicts?
No, don't look for conflicts. If you have a correct relationship with your spouse, then they will naturally appear. You're not the one building them. They appear themselves.
Well, I'm not talking about husband and wife, but just in life. Who's called a happy one? Is the one who is in an internal conflict with himself?
It's a person who's constantly, in every second, if he can, of course, in every second he renews his connection to the Creator.
So what does the conflict have to do with this?
Conflict, because you can't have this renewal of connection before without having a descent before that, and in that you have a conflict.
And this evokes happiness within the person.
Yes, absolutely that. Happiness is the solution to conflicts. Otherwise, we don't sense them. If you give a person everything that he wants, he will be completely unhappy.
What is the ideal happiness that a person aspires to?
No, this doesn't exist. They don't understand this. You can see this as something like a private state, when a person can have everything. He's resting. When if he's resting, then that's because he knows what work is. Or where he has his villa on the sea, that's because he knows that a lot of others don't have this. He has to grab the oppositeness of the state from somewhere.
So if he wouldn't know that others don't have it, he wouldn't feel happy, he wouldn't feel higher than others.
No, only in comparison either with his own incorrected states or with correct states of others.
So this is what's called egoistic happiness, when I feel greater, bigger than others.
Yes,
I
yes,
have
of course.
more.
Итальянка сидит на
You
балконе.
know, when an Italian woman is sitting on a balcony,
Старый анекдот из
it's an old joke
сидит на
from
балконе, мороженое, наслаждается
she's an Italian woman is sitting on the balcony, is eating ice cream, and she's really enjoying this. And she's thinking, oh, if only this was a little bit bitter.
Да, обязательно добавить.
You had to add that.
Кондитер, спросите кого угодно. Без добавления.
And you can ask everybody. You can't really feel something that's sweet without adding something that's a little spicy or bitter.
Okay, we now have questions according to the topic from Kiev.
Нет, я думаю, что это все понятно, мне кажется.
I think that a lot of people understand all this.
Okay, question. What is the highest state that Kabbalah describes as a complete state of happiness?
Complete total happiness is in complete total combination of the left line and the right line, the system that's egoistic, klipa, uncleanliness, roughness, everything, coarseness. And when it's completely it's completed by the right line, the quality of bestowal, love, care, and so on. When these two lines, when these two systems coexist together, they fulfill one another, and when they exist together in a middle line, in a complete completion of one another, then the state is called total happiness. And this state doesn't remain constant. It nonetheless continuously more and more reveals in itself some problems and issues that it must continuously correct and continue to fulfill one another, and it's completely dynamic and changes all the time.
Another friend saying, one day without Kabbalah makes me feel unhappy. Why do I feel that Kabbalah influences me like a drug?
Because otherwise you are not connected to the system that can fulfill you. Because this is how it is.
It doesn't... You don't feel offended by the word drug?
No, Torah is also called a drug, so there's nothing bad in this.
Question. If I'm uncorrected, then I'm unable to have proper conflicts. How do I balance good and evil within me?
Don't judge bad or good. Don't rise up to good and bad. Only aspire towards interconnectedness and combining these, and perfection is in the combination of those two in this middle line, and we're going to study this. What's the positive thing about the middle line?
Question from Moscow: If our world is ruled by the forces of evil, can there be clear balance between good and evil?
And it can exist because in our world there is no spiritual state. Our world is in such a tiny egoistic state, and only so that it would force us to ascend above this state, and there you would be able to understand the egoistic system of negative forces and an altruistic system of positive.
The fact that we're talking about it here, what good does that do?
We aren't just talking about this. We exist here in our world so that the concept of time would continuously be felt inside us. It's not like Faust would say, "Please stop this moment, for you're beautiful," because you can really skip through time. But in a normal person in our world, the state, it's perfectly captured, because in each moment, each second in time, this time, it would conduct through him certain sensations. And then he would absorb into himself from the right and left line, from the positive and negative systems, impressions that would, with each second, accumulate inside him from left and right, from left and right. In such a manner, a person exists, even if he doesn't feel this way. But he's constantly switched from one side to the next. And then, gradually in his life or throughout different lives, he has to come to a state where he has to solve this conflict. And that's when he begins to instinctively get
He needs to come to the middle line.
Yes, because with these sensations he creates the middle line, and then he justifies the right and left and this concept of time. And this sensation of time is the root of our depression. If we wouldn't have time, we wouldn't have depression.
Why not?
Because it constantly gives us the difference of existence in all these different time. Because it comes from Zaranpin. Because Zaranpin comes from it consists of 6 parts, and that's why an hour splits into 60 minutes. And it's very interesting because this division of time doesn't exist anywhere else. It really comes from this realization of a personal spiritual state, and that's why you have lunar months and a sun-based year, and that's how we really count our state based on seconds, which really don't apply to anything else. And that's why you have a 6 days and 7th day is a perfect.
We'll get to that. Everything comes from the system of Zaranpin, which is why it's divided into 6 parts. And then after that it divides into 12 parts, because there are 2 lines.
Question from Lutsk: what's the spiritual root? That the connection of contradictions is the foundation of happiness. Is this wisdom?
We observe this everywhere. Take music, take anything. You will see that everything is built on harmony of opposites, and it can be any other way. One system, left or right, regardless whether this is black or white or minor or major, you will not discover anything perfect in it. Perfection can only be in connections. Just like Bach, he is perfection.
Irina is asking the ability to sense that I'm connected to the spirituality. Is this the foundation of happiness?
You can be in connection with eternality and perfection if you know how to establish consistent connection between the left and the right line, and to constantly support it, moving from the left to the right and from right to the left. Eternal imperfection doesn't mean a constant state. It means that you're able to, that you know how to jump from one state to another, and the left and the right states become perfect for you.
I understand. If our world has some sort of an end, I mean our life, everybody, and said that in a number of decades, everybody who's looking, even us, they were not going to be here.
We'll be in a different state, in a different world. The way I observe you now, even, is not through my body, through my eyes, but through my internal sensations. So what?
Yeah, but this is something that you still must come to.
This possibility exists, at least for all of those that are watching us right now. This exists.
So if I can come to this ultimate state, it doesn't matter how long it takes. The whole life, 20, 30 years, I live for this chance.
This is what we live for.
So I have a question. So when I tell others about this, they are not inspired by this, but they're inspired by the fact you're going to die and, you're going to have an afterlife. Why are they inspired by this?
Because this doesn't obligate a person to anything. People believe in this. The entire humanity believes in this, into these post-life
it
states.
still obligates them. They do some actions. They're trying to live by some rules. They try.
Kabbalah doesn't have any relationship to this. It says that you need to attain the future world in this world.
So I can say in 20, 30 years, you and I will go through. Let's apply effort towards this. Or they'll say, oh, you're going to die and then you'll have an afterlife. In this thing I believe, and the other one I don't. What's the root?
Well, first of all, these things are not arguable. There is no reason to argue about this. The thing is, a person has developed until a certain state when he needs to seek for the meaning of life now. And if he will look for it, he's not going to be interested in the afterlife. And then he will feel, according to the measure of his spiritual advancement, he will absolutely correctly feel that this is not so.
So everything is from a person, based on his sensations.
How can you prove this? The only proof is within our five senses, otherwise you can't prove anything. What does Kabbalah say? Kabbalah says that a Kabbalist begins to sense already in our world this system, this universe, that you cannot describe to any other person. The same thing you can say. You can't say to a religious person that afterlife doesn't exist.
But there are billions of believers.
I don't understand, by the way. I personally I'm convinced that if you believe all these masses, then that's bad.
But a person wants this.
So what if I want something? Does that mean that it needs to exist?
But there's nothing there.
There's no such thing here or there. There's an attainment of a person, and after his death, all the opportunities to attain are finished, are ended until his next incarnation, when he has new Rishimot, and he starts from scratch, not from scratch, but from the place where he finished.
So everything depends on a person. Everything comes from nature.
Everything is given by nature except his freedom of will.
So more or less, people who hear from us are those who have a point in their heart.
Those without a point in heart will eventually fall off and will try to stop us, because we negate their understanding of heaven and future life and so forth. And we are, according to them, materialists, who say that, yes, you can change this current world and you can make it eternal and perfect. But to say that a person just simply lives and then eventually comes to the upper world, that's not right.
So a person with a point of heart, he will hear that he will be able to attain the next world, which is the quality of bestowal that you can attain in this life.
In regards to future life, you see that all nations, in all countries, in all continents have developed this belief that there exists an afterlife, exists another life. I spoke with American Indians, real American Indians, in Mexico, everywhere. Egyptians who believed, the Chinese who have buried their warriors, the statues of terracotta. All nations have this. This existed even before the birth of Abrahamic religions. When Abraham appeared with his method, this method separated this group from others in humanity, because it says that this world, your world, you will see in this life.
You'll see your life you'll see your world in your life.
Yes, that's first. Second, this group existed on this high level, high degree, and attained the upper world in this life, and they didn't need any kind of transition. Animal to animal and spiritual to the soul. When the body died, then it died. Nobody cared for it, for this body. The burials were also different than now. A person was placed somewhere so that wild animals wouldn't eat him, put him into a cave, he would be dried up, and his bones would be collected and placed in a vase, and would be sealed and placed into a cave. And there you would have hundreds of these vases with bones. They related to a human as to a human, but to an animal as to an animal. Baal Salam even said that doesn't matter to me where the bag with my bones will be buried. There were no holy rituals or very special attitudes towards the body. That's how Kabbalah relates to it. But to attain the upper world, the spiritual world, that is our goal. It's our opportunity.
Artyom from Gamburg writes that you're destroying illusions of millions. Is this good?
We don't destroy the illusions of millions. I'm telling this to those people that are together with us right now, who have an opportunity to reveal the upper world in this world. And then all of their illusions will disappear, and they'll be able to correctly exist in both worlds, which is why I'm telling this to them. On the other hand, though, I can say that afterwards, when a person will not want to listen to us, he'll return to regular life, he'll forget about these words and enjoy his life. I promise you this.
It's very interesting. So from Haifa, you're quoting Torah, and in Torah it says you're not going to find anyone who's so that there are spirits, and maybe you can call out the dead from the dead. What's a dead desire?
A dead desire are those desires that you cannot correct at the moment, nor so that you wouldn't evoke them, because with this you don't lift yourself. The spirit is ruach. It talks about the limitations of correction. Torah talks only about corrections. Nowhere in Torah does it talk about our body, even about animalistic desires which exist within us. It talks only about how to develop within yourself the quality of bestowal, and through it to go from bestowal to your surrounding, to bestowal towards the Creator. And this bestowal to the Creator will be spiritual force.
So now we started about happiness, now it's about death, then it's going to be depression.
Would you be happy if death wouldn't exist?
Oh, so bad. I think so, why not?
Of course.
Nobody wants to die.
I don't think that if a person would be given an opportunity to live hundreds of years, that he would agree, under any circumstances, would agree to exist in our world for hundreds of years.
People are looking for tablets, how to live for a couple hundred years more.
In reality, a person would not be able to live for so many years. Our life is still limited. They write somewhere that there's an opportunity to live for 100 years. That's not true.
So, question from Lvov. The force of light that exists in Kabbalah, can it save me from depression?
From depression, yes. It can. You see, depression, it's possible that it exists on a physiological level. A lack of certain chemical compounds, which is why these addition of these chemical compounds is necessary. This is very common these days. But if this is just a regular depression that occurs from inner imbalance, then I'm confident that this can be resolved with Kabbalah. A person comes to balance, he begins to balance the negative and the positive system. That's how it acts, first of all. The issue is with the environment. If he's in the correct environment that supports him, the problem is with the teacher as well, that shows him how to correctly attain adhesion between the negative and the positive qualities, and that he would listen to him and try to do this. The method of Kabbalah lifts one above all problems, but it says the problems will exist and there will be new problems in order for you to balance them with the right line.
So the problem is psychological, because the desire to receive is limited.
All problems are psychological.
So if a person receives from himself, he's limited. He can't get pleasure. Can you say it like this?
Yes.
And Bar Salam offers, or Kabbalah offers, a new form of pleasure, which is called bestowal. So if I continuously bestow it, I'll be happy. Can you say it like this?
This state needs to be attained in order to get pleasure from bestowal. If you have an opportunity like this, then you truly be happy boundlessly.
So the concept on its own is correct, right?
The concept is correct, like with a mother that wants to give her child everything.
So on our level, to be happy, you must bestow. So if you care for someone, if you're giving, are you going to be happy?
If a person is in the correct group, then from mutual bestowal towards one another, they not only feel happiness, but spiritual ascent. They feel the Creator between them.
And altruists in our world, are they happier in our world than just egoists?
Altruists are not as limited, but in order to be an altruist in our world, you need to be born like this or end up in an environment that will brainwash you. Then you can be an altruist and receive pleasure from it. It's a type of brainwashing, not according to his internal. And a question from Moscow. What does it mean to attain the quality of bestowal? Can you explain it through feeling? What does it really mean?
Ask a mother who cares for their child and how she's happy that she's able to give to the child. See how much she watches the child. The child is in her arms and she constantly wants to correct something, move something, adjust something, touch something. She constantly wants to do something around him. And this is an animal quality of bestowal. And it shows to us that it's possible on an animal level, in part for a limited period of time, but it's possible.
Question from Moscow. Everything has a spiritual root. What does regular faith, earthly faith, belief have a spiritual root?
The spiritual root of spiritual belief is the fear of death, fear of disappearance.
And here I start believing in all kinds of things.
Yeah, this loss of life.
But if there wouldn't be death, then there wouldn't be all kinds of beliefs.
Yes, of course. You can only build faith on the fact that it's good or bad for me in this world. They would exist, but they would exist in a completely different form. The biggest sadness is loss, death, and if it wasn't so, they would have different religions, different beliefs.
You said that a person wouldn't agree to live eternally.
No, what I said was that if you gave a person the ability to live forever, and if we would follow him, then you would see what he would start to feel after a couple hundred years. It's a horrible state. It's going to be worse than death.
Enough already.
Can you imagine the same thing every day? Groundhog's Day, yeah.
Question from Russia. What is the main rule in order not to go away from happiness?
The best possibility to not disconnect from happiness is to, on your own, to reveal the left line and place yourself under some sort of negative qualities, and see how you're moving away from the Creator, from the friends, and in such a manner begin to get closer to the correct quality, to unity.
It doesn't mean that I involved in self-introspection.
No,
right?
This isn't self-introspection. This is something different.
Practical question. When the method of Kabbalah elevates one above problems, then a person is his head is in the clouds from that point on, and he stops dealing with his earthly problems.
No, this isn't right, but this happens when a person begins to reveal the method of Kabbalah. He gets to a point where he's so pulled in by it. All of a sudden you have a method, a science, you have examples, people, books, a whole system that talks about how everything is built in our life, and this attracts people to it. And to raise yourself above this, to see what's in life and in death, what happens to souls and all of their reincarnation and so on. So there are many questions that regular people have, which are solved in their when they meet Kabbalah, and when they're really pulled in by this, they can start to, really drop everything in their life, their family, their job. And here we need to be vigilant, because the revelation of the system, it really shocks some people. So we have to be very careful with this. And that's why Kabbalah isn't revealed in each generation, and it's not so simple. But in our generation, we can already reveal it, because the humanity went through so many states in such a manner that it's difficult to surprise anybody with anything.
Maybe this is the reason why Kabbalah wasn't recommended for anyone to study that doesn't have a family.
Yes, a family, responsibilities, work, years, your age, it all makes a difference.
Question from St. Petersburg. If our world doesn't get corrected and shouldn't be corrected, then why all the problems that a person receives, one receives through this world, all of the blows, the fates a person receives from this world? And if this doesn't change, then where's happiness?
Yeah, this will change, I promise you. Gradually you will begin to feel that all the problems of your world, of the one you live in today, they're there so that you'd be able to bring them to equilibrium with the Creator, with the upper world. Everything that you feel manifest here today, it's everything that the Creator shows to you in this world. It's not going to bother you in establishing the connection with the Creator. Everything you're going to feel, it'll bring you to sensing the connection to the Creator.
Question: how to argue in a family in order not to... you said that arguments, conflicts help in the family. How do conflict in such a way as not to break the family apart?
It's a very interesting system when we're together, and we're revealing some issues in your combined, in your relationship, not in each other, but in the relationship, and you together come to a solution.
So constantly between us.
Yes, always between us, and both in the positive and negative states. So first we get attached to one another, and then we begin to reveal how can we make our adhesion to one another even more effective. And from that we must begin to understand how do we get an even bigger state of adhesion to one another. And when we reveal the state, we work on it.
How often should we do this exercise?
All the time. Why not? Because expressly in that you're going to begin to attain more and more spiritual attainment. Spiritual, we're not talking about the contact between hearts or bodies.
So let's say a conflict, I see a conflict is coming. What do I do?
So you must grab this opposite negative state, really grab onto it and hold onto it and come to some sort of mutual understanding. And when this mutual understanding is attained, then bring up this, this conflict forward, holding onto it, not physically holding onto anything, but you have to use this conflict as even greater.
So you say we need to raise above this problem?
first you must come to contact with it, and then you bring it up slowly and slowly so that they would give you the chance to have more contact.
So when does this point of happiness arise here?
So it comes when you're working on this together. So when it comes from negative and minus, and when it's something that you're working on together, then this process brings...
The process itself brings pleasure, and the other side also needs to do this.
Yes, this is something that you feel together, of course, together. How else?
Question. Rina asks, when a person's not academic and is not able to look at drawings and formulas correctly, is Kabbalah for this person?
Kabbalah doesn't ask for a specific form. Then there are explanations that are given, let's say, for example, in psychology. If you begin to really seriously study psychology, you'll see graphs and formulas and physical dependencies and graphs and all these things. And although you talk about feelings of a person, but there are states that you have to give form to, that you have to evaluate, give them connection to one another, see connection between them, and that's how you come to different forms and measurements and so on. And although psychology is not a science per se, there are still these methods of measurements. And in Kabbalah there's a lot of them, and very different. And although it's a science about feelings, it's a very precise science of feelings. But you don't necessarily have to always understand all these graphs and formulas and drawings.
Question from Philadelphia. What does it mean that Kabbalah gets revealed when the main book of Kabbalah, the Old Testament is... how does Kabbalah get revealed?
How is it revealed? How is it revealed? With what? It still remains closed. It's some sort of a story about history, and no more than that. That's how we read it. How do children read it, and how do adults read it? This is how they read it. As a historical novel and nothing else. It's well written. It was written 3,000 years ago. Can you imagine? Just for a moment, that 3,000 years ago they wrote this book. It's a very extraordinary event. And the person sat down and wrote this, and look how it's explained, in what language, how it's laid out.
The revelation of this book is in the fact that it's not understood by anybody. It's because it's not written in a way that people think that it's written in.
Yes, of course. They also other than Torah, they read the books of prophets and.
Что же можно сказать? Это все великие книги, но они написаны на таком
языке. These are great books, but they're written in such a language where we must interpret them.
Question: Kabbalah saves one from the fear of death?
Kabbalah raises a person above the fear of death.
A person stops fearing death?
Yes, of course. Because as soon as he is connected to the soul and he lives inside his soul, the body stops existing for him. And that's when Rabash told me, what do you do with the body? I asked him. And he told me, like when you're putting your shirt into the washing machine in the evening, and in the morning you put on a new one. In the same manner, you drop this body of yours, and then you get a brand new one. It happens to you completely without any suffering, as it happens with your shirt.
But if a person doesn't attain the state that Rabash attained, can you convince a person to relate to the death the way that you're relating to it?
It still happens in this way, and a person can relate to them in such a way. Oh, let me kill myself, I'll get the afterlife right away with all these promises and so on. It can be even more than that. Society can do anything.
Do you think that it's correct to educate people like this?
The only thing I think is appropriate is to bring people to Kabbalah. Everything else, the society will need to get rid of.
I mean, to raise a person to feel that death is not anything to fear.
No, I'm telling you this, just like that. But for the most part, don't tell this to people. Fear of death is very necessary. It protects a person. And if there's no fear of death, go see what they do. They kill other people and do all these terrible things, thinking that with this they'll earn something now, some sort of future world upper reward.
A question from Kyrgyzia: What does a Kabbalist think about the entire day?
Kabbalist for the whole day? I don't even know how to express this. What else is there to think about except how to bring the Creator into your world? What else is there? Nothing. And all the upper worlds, this is a system of mutual understanding between you and the Creator. There's nothing else other than that. Well, what about we're saying the Creator is quality of bestowal?
I think about how to acquire the quality of bestowal. How do I enter this quality of bestowal? How would I see the world within this quality of bestowal, within the quality of complete connection? It's not that I want him to see him as a small child, a perfect child. I want to see within him a force of the Creator that connects him and creates within him all of these events.
I see what bestowal is what you say, is how I understand it. Bestowal, it's me, I have to give something to someone else.
No, bestowal is a quality. Just as the quality of reception. I have a quality of reception within me.
I constantly think about how do I receive something, how can I use somebody else, and here I do something the opposite.
Yeah, so do the opposite. For now, yes. Do the opposite for now.
Question from Denise, it's a bit advanced. So if Kabbalah, it allows a person to develop egoism inside of him. Is it possible that this process will really go beyond the control, and then you'll have this great sensation of disappointment and hatred?
Of course, hatred will be awakened, and it's revealed in a measure that we can counteract, so that we would be able to build the middle line. That's why, naturally, for every participant in every group, there will be conflicts and misunderstandings and hatred, just like with students of Rabbi Shimon that were writing the book of Zohar. They wrote about the fact that they wanted to kill each other.
Is it going to go beyond control?
No, this will be given in a very measured way.
So every situation it's possible to solve.
Absolutely. Otherwise, it wouldn't be given. This is according to the law of don't place obstacles before the blind.
Dan from Vilnius is asking, how should I act when I reveal evil inside myself, and it's giving me strength? I fear the state, but I need to.
The evil does give strength. It's true, but it's not a correct force. Try to place against this force another force, an opposite force. And then out of them two, create a middle line. This middle line will be your line of connection with the Creator, because from him comes out the left line, evil, and also from him comes what you asked for, the good, the right line, and the middle line that you will build between them, which will be your connection with the Creator.
Question from Russia. The person who's happy is the one who doesn't need anything. Is this so?
In general, yes. On this earthly level, if all of my desires are higher than the desires of this world towards love and bestowal outside of me, then of course this is happiness.
What if we don't pay attention to desires? There's methods when we don't pay attention to desires.
In
Will
that
I be
case,
happy?
a person lowers himself to the level of the still.
So there's a person who doesn't really criticize anybody. Is he happy?
But this is the happiness of the still level, like the stone. In that way, one preserves himself in order not to suffer. But what about the fact that you are together with the entire humanity? You will not be able to save yourself from all the suffering. It will come through eventually. You will eventually have a desire to become something greater.
So Balasalam writes that if a person would make such a calculation and in his life he'll see how much he has pleasure and how much he has suffering, he'd commit suicide right away, because the amount of, if you measure in kilograms, the amount of suffering, there's a lot more than happiness. Why is such a way of measuring things is hidden from us? Why is it hidden from us?
So that there will be an process of accumulation within us, so that we would eventually be able to accumulate many states, bitterness, depression, and so forth, so that we would get despaired in life in order to want to raise above ourselves to answer the question, why do we suffer? For what reason?
Maybe the happiness is in forgiveness. What's forgiveness in Kabbalah?
There's no such thing as forgiveness in Kabbalah.
Should I forgive, and in what situation?
No. By forgiveness, I understand that something is not good, and then I postpone it and cover it up as if it doesn't exist. That's not a resolution of a problem.
You only spring contrast.
I actually worsen the states and make it more critical, which is forgiveness is not correct. Forgiveness is not a resolution of conflicts, because next time it will come out even in a worse way.
So how does a conflict solve?
In the middle line.
And is there punishment?
Punishment is also not the same as in our world. All of this needs to be resolved in the middle line. This wound is opened up, it's revealed, and it's healed until it becomes a healthy organism.
So jail doesn't help?
We see that in our world, that jail and judgment doesn't help. It simply isolates a person from society. So what happens with them? A person is placed into prison for 10, 20 years, and what happens with him? He's hopeful that he'll be let out within 2 to 3 years. Let's say there are certain systems like that, but in general, it's not a correction. A prison needs to be a correcting facility. I was once in American prisons because we wrote some articles for them, and by the way, they really valued these articles. We have students that came out of those prisons and are currently in our US groups, American groups. In those there, it's called a system of correction, not system of punishment. Well, in some ways it actually does work. Which is why I advise everyone to pay attention to this, because if this is a system of punishment, it doesn't work as a punishment.
Borisov writes that punishment comes from society.
If the society relates to this transgressor as truly as a transgressor, then this would be his correction. In our society, people envy those that steal something for example.
So something that the person must use the society for. Question from New York. How can we solve conflicts without mutual forgiveness, without forgetting the past?
Имеется в виду между народами.
There's no forgetting of the past. Nothing gets forgotten. If you're thinking that something can be forgotten, that's not correct. It will come out eventually in a much worse way. There's no such thing as forgetfulness.
Как решать конфликты между народами?
So how do we solve conflicts between nations?
Only in the middle line, when each one of them compensates all of the other things between one another, when they connect to one another and go together as one whole. Otherwise, it's not correction.
So don't forget what was, and don't bring up everything that happened in the story.
Thanks to the fact that we don't forget, it actually obligates us to connect even more.
Question from Kim. How do we figure out so that I would fulfill what I need to do? Why is it so difficult to figure out?
What precisely needs to be done? We need to participate in our small group within a huge amount of our other groups, and to constantly think about the fact that we help each other and become one system. And within our 10, within my 10, I gradually attain the quality of bestowal of mutuality, which is called the Creator. And within this feeling that I review within the 10 and feel within the 10, within this feeling, I will begin to see myself dwelling in the upper world. This is something that we need to attain.
Another question from Kiev. The fact that we leave the actions of our world and we gather for our webinar today, does this excite the forces of our world?
Of course, otherwise I wouldn't be here if we wouldn't together awaken the upper world, each one of us. I'm very happy to see all of these cities, Kiev, Tallinn, our friends from Mac Online, Köln, Düsseldorf. We have other cities, Moscow, St. Petersburg, and so on and so forth. Shaulai.
Почему мы не можем чуть-чуть увидеть, как мы возбуждаем?
Why can't we see even a little bit how we excite these forces?
You're not allowed to see. You're still little. You become proud and wouldn't be able to pay attention. A person is shown only that which is necessary for him for a correct balance of his spiritual advancement. Otherwise, his ego will explode and he'll start to try to control everything. Which is why we, in our spiritual upbringing, receive only that influence that is merited and need to correctly react to it through the center of the group.
So if a person comes and says, "Oh, throughout this time I didn't feel anything,"
doesn't matter that he didn't experience anything. All these people that are sitting here are receiving a very good portion of the spiritual light that will exist within them. I see and recognize a lot of the people here.
Oh, and I know everyone in Kiev because I was there.
Well, good.
Как мы возбуждаем этот свет? Чем?
How do we excite this light? With what? With our desire?
With our desires, we attract it. I think we're preventing Azerbaijan from having a very nice meal that they have already placed before them.
Тогда, наверное, последний вопрос.
So maybe then the last question.
В какой момент духовного развития человек
In one moment of spiritual development can a person really begin to control the three lines?
It's not a simple question. At the beginning, there's Ibur, a fetus, an embryo, when I simply know myself. then I continue to annul myself on at first degrees, which is called conception. When I enter the spirituality as an embryo, I try not to do anything except from annulling myself. I'll do anything can happen, but I will annul myself. If I act in this way, then I'm being developed by forces, regardless of what kind of forces. Good forces, bad forces, left, right, pleasant, unpleasant. These are forces of development. Let them do whatever they need to do. All I do is I annul myself. I give myself into the hands of these two forces, the negative and the positive. After they finish their influence upon me, gradually there awakens within me an understanding of the middle force, the middle line, and so on and so forth.
Your wishes for the week?
My wishes. You need to aspire towards the middle line and resolve everything in it, and everything in your life, the relationship between you, in your family, in work. Everything is in the middle line, the good and the bad. Everything is towards the good of your advancement, spiritual advancement. Good day.